Help me, I'm a hustler. I'm a hustler.
All my life, been grinding all my life. Sacrifice, hustle paid the price.
Welcome to the Hustle Island Podcast, episode number 3. HustleIsland.com, real hustlers, real stories. Adam DeCorte, better known as the Float Guy, joins us today from the West Coast. Go to float.com. We're not going to waste any time. We're going to jump right in. This is a story about heightened senses and the journey of life. Adam, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Mac. I appreciate it, man. I'm glad to be here. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Thanks, man. We appreciate you joining us. And like we said, real hustlers, real stories. Adam, tell us your story. Tell us about yourself.
Whew, man. All right. Let's see if I can wrap this up in a short version. But let's see. I was born in Whittier, California, and a small little suburb out here in Southern California, and have two older brothers. I'm the baby of the family. And I'm a product of the 80s, man. So I'm a hip hop guy, Run
Nice.
DMC and all the old school OG guys. Definitely like that stuff.
I love that, man.
And yeah. And let's see, another product of the 80s, I guess, would be divorce. So, came from a broken home at the age of 8. Struggled through junior high and high school with trying to see my dad and, trying to be with him and have that relationship. Unfortunately, he just wasn't into it as much as, I would have liked him to be. He had a gambling problem, so it was Vegas and the craps and the tables were definitely more important than spending time with us. But so goes life. At the age of 14, he ended up passing away. That's okay, man. It was difficult for sure at the time. I mean, losing a parent, regardless of your relationship, is never easy. But I definitely, powered through that, got through that, at a young age, and, had a rocky teenage life. I was rebellious and did things I probably shouldn't have done all the way up into my 20s. But learned a lot of lessons, man. I'm very thankful for what I've gone through in my life. It's put me where I am today and made me the person I am. So
That's awesome, man. Thanks for sharing that with us. Yeah, now you talked about a little bit on your childhood and going through a divorce, and that can't be easy. And you're a father yourself. How has that shaped your life now?
Oh man, that's a crazy question, but my oldest daughter is 11, and so since between the ages of 8 and 11, I have tremendously been very thoughtful of that, because I look at her and go, wow, what kind of life would she have if her mom and I weren't together or weren't in a relationship, or we broke our home. I know what that does to kids. I've seen it not only by myself, but then through friends and family, and it's tough. And so, it definitely, it's a bittersweet moment now. I love every moment I get to spend with them. And it is, it's a trial. She's 11, my son's 10, and my youngest is 8. And so we have a busy household, man. I wouldn't change it for anything. I love being a father. It is definitely something I love doing.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
How about, you're in business now, and family, that's a big part of it. Tell us about how it is, with you starting a business and how has that affected your family?
Yeah. So it's kind of crazy. Our family dynamic is kind of interesting. My wife's got a great job, has had one for many years. And I've kind of been on let me start with this. When my daughter was born and my son was born, we had lost a child before my daughter, just in a miscarriage. And then moving into when my son was born, my wife kind of was having some difficulties with her pregnancy, and it put her on bed rest. And at the time I was a real estate agent. And I was, that was right about the crash, the 2008 crash of the real estate business. And so business was tanking. She wasn't working. She was put on bed rest. We had a 6-month-old little baby. We're trying to figure out what to do with that. She's been told she can't move from the couch pretty much. Luckily I had a job that I was able to work from home, but with the crash happening and all of that, we tanked, man. I mean, financially tanked. Relationships were strained because, man, having a toddler and then being pregnant again and all of that kind of stuff. So we went through a season of racking up tons of debt. just to put food on the table, just to pay the mortgage, just to pay the car payments and stuff. And that was a stress. We were just using credit cards to buy milk and formula, just hustling to get by. Right. I mean, just doing what we had to do. And, it was, from there, I kind of became the caretaker of our family. Because like I said, my wife's got a really good job, great company. She was moving up the ranks and has continued to move up the ranks in that company. And so we just kind of put our eggs under her basket and said, hey, you keep going and I'll kind of be the stay-at-home dad, if you will. And so I transitioned kind of into that, which, I wouldn't recommend, but, hey, if you find yourself in a situation, you just got to make the best of it. And so I spent a lot of time at home. So I was always looking for ways to make money from home, or ways to, just, help bring something to the table. Because as a man, I think that, we have this inside of us. We are just the what am I trying to say? We're the ones that go out, right, and kill it and drag it home, and not to go into any gender roles or anything, but I'm just saying that, I think we're built that way. And so it was kind of difficult for me, but I became the caretaker. And so up until probably, I would say maybe 4 or 5 years ago, that role kind of changed. I had stepped into a couple different positions with a couple different companies, and just kind of worked part-time and did that thing, and did the house thing, or the stay-at-home dad thing. And that was difficult, I think, in a mindset of a man, to kind of be that, that role. But I wouldn't have changed it for the world, man. And so, I loved all the time I got to spend with my kids. I know that a lot of dads that are not in my position haven't had a chance to spend that time with their kids. And I believe that that's huge. I think especially for my daughters, man, raising daughters is not easy. But just having me in their life and being able to be there for them has been huge. So, that's been my role. And just recently my wife and I talked, and we basically decided that it was kind of my time to shine, if you will. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but just my time to do something. And so just recently, I started up a new company, or getting ready to start a new company. I'm in the process of that. I know we'll get to that in a minute, but yeah, the work-life balance, man, it's tough. I got 3 kids. Like I said, they were 11, 11, 10, and 8. And my youngest is in gymnastics, and she competes competitively. She's in season right now. So she spends about 24 hours a week in the gym. Okay. So she carries a part-time job at 7 years old, plus goes to school. My son, who's in the middle of my 2 daughters, he plays club soccer. So he's constantly got practices, and, we're traveling for him on the weekends. And then my oldest, she's, got her own thing going. She's taking voice lessons to become just kind of sing, and she wants to express herself that way. And she's got Girl Scouts, and she's in recreational soccer. And so, our schedules are crazy with, and my wife travels a lot. She's got a job that demands a lot of travel. So she's gone a lot, and I got to take care of the house, as well as the 3 little ones, and make sure that we're, fed right, and we're moving forward. So.
Gosh, that's a lot. We've covered a lot. Like,
yeah,
you talked about your childhood, and then being a father. Like, what motivates you every day?
Oh man, that's a good question. So I have to say I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. And so, my faith is definitely something that motivates me quite often. It's my backbone for sure. I definitely strive not to be my dad. Not that I hold him very high in respect. He did what he did, but he was still a man and a father to me to some degree. And so I just look at that and go, hey, you know what? If I didn't get the father I want to be able to do that for my kids. And so being there for them and making sure that I got a listening ear for them. And sometimes that's hard, being the disciplinary and also listening and, trying to balance that. But I would say that's been huge, man. Spending time with my wife too, over the last year, has been huge. That drives me, just to look at her and go, okay, we're here for a purpose on this world, and we're living it. And so, yeah, man, faith is something that's just so huge in me. And that's what I go to on a daily.
You touch on your dad, and like you said, that gambling, and you said that you don't want to be him. Talk about your mom. I mean, I'm gonna let you talk about it.
Sure. Yeah. No, man, my mom's a special person for sure. I think all moms are. But she, her and I had a rocky relationship coming. I mean, I was a bitter punk little teenage kid. I did some things during that time that, would make any mom blush and any mom be embarrassed for it. But my mom was a rock, man. I mean, she was one of those people that when my dad left and, we came home one time to the house locked and there was nothing in the house, completely empty. Everything was gone. And we heard from the neighbors that, he had basically had a garage sale and fire sold everything out from under us. Even our videos from like childhood and Christmases, he just like sold them to people. So, if anybody's got any videos from us from the 80s, I'd love to get a copy of it. But, my mom, she's a fighter, man. She's a hustler. She went to work full time. She was taking care of 3 kids, 3 boys, and we were not the easiest boys to take care of. And she hustled every day in and out. She worked retail. She was a retail manager, and she just, she made things happen. I mean, I think that's true, as well. I have to give credit. Part of my faith came from my mom because she got involved in the church when she was down and out and needed something to look forward to. She needed something to kind of uplift her. And she got surrounded by some great people that came alongside us. And I mean, there'd be times we'd open up our apartment door and there'd be 3 or 4 bags of groceries sitting there. And we'd call my mom like, "Hey, did you leave groceries?" Cause she'd be working and "No, what are you talking about? That was not me." Just with a note saying, "Hey, we love you and just, want to make sure you guys got some food." So my mom hustled hard all the way. She just retired a couple years ago.
Nice.
So she's living the retired life, man. And she loves being a grandma. She actually helps us out a lot right now. When my wife and I are both gone traveling or doing stuff, she steps in and helps us. And so my mom's a great person, man. She's been with me, through thick and thin and have always had faith in me, even though, I've been a difficult child. And she's always said something to me. She said something to me beginning of this year that reminded me of kind of like maybe why I have a purpose here. And that is when, so not to get graphic, but as I was being born, and this was in the early 80s, I had the umbilical cord wrapped around my neck, but nobody knew it. So the doctors and nurses are telling her like, bear down, keep pushing, right? And so she's trying to push, and then she's telling them like, there's something wrong, something's not right, this or that. And at this time, they didn't have all the monitors and all this kind of stuff to be able to tell, that I was in distress or what have you. And so after fighting with the doctors and nurses for a good amount of time, the doctor finally said, "Okay, let's stop and let's check something out." And he realized that I had the umbilical cord wrapped around my neck. So they were able to unwrap it. I was born and, I came out with rope burns basically around my neck. And my mom always said that, you're special. I don't want to think I'm special, but she says that I'm special, and that I have a purpose. And, over the last 10 years of my life, I've been in ministry with a local church and been working for the Lord, doing his work. And it was it's kind of gratifying to know that maybe we do really truly have some sort of purpose on this life, and we can share our story with others, if that's either in faith or in business or what have you. I think that's what I love about the Hustler Club and being a part of this community, is that we're connected now with a group of people that have a like mind in business and in life. And we care about each other enough to say, "Hey, I want to help you with wherever step you're at." I appreciate Greg and you, Mac, for doing what you guys are doing on this thing, because, it's definitely helped me just start to, especially during this last year, look at it and, man, go, I'm going to hustle. And these words that are in here, I love it, man. I mean, I don't know if anybody's had a chance to go in and really read all of these words that are made up of this, and it's huge. And so I got 2 hustle shirts with one on the way with a couple other ones. And I tell you what, it's a daily thing. I almost wear this every other day. And it's really just to remind me of what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and the perseverance I need to do on a daily basis.
What's your life purpose?
Whew, man, my life purpose. Well, like I said, I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. So, I have to say it's, introducing people to him. It's not anything I can do. It's all through him and the grace that he gives us. I think too, a side note from that, if there is one, to caveat that would be, my purpose right now is my family, bar none. But is to bring people relief in our daily stressors, man. We live a life and we live in a society right now. Even if you take out all of the political, stuff that's going on and all of the, humanity things that are happening in the world, if you just look at daily life, especially here in America, man, this thing is 10 years old, the smartphone deal. And we are can't leave it. Right. We can't, constantly, yeah. Right. And we're constantly looking at it. We're constantly checking it. We're being inundated with so many different, advertisements or just constantly thinking or, hey, how many likes did my post get? Or, oh shoot, I should have done this instead of that on my social media or whatever. Right. And we're stressed by that. I mean, we use this thing for our alarm clock and it sits next to us and it buzzes in the middle of the night and we don't even know it, but our brain is actually now triggered by that little blue light that flashes of a notification. And even if you have it next to you, this is scientific proven. You guys should go read Mel Robbins, her 5-second rule. She did some studies in this thing where it's actually proven that our brains when we're sleeping is still connected to this thing. And if you have it on your nightstand and it's flashing from a notification or from an email or a call, our brain is actually wired to think about that. And so we're not getting the sleep that we should be getting. They say 8 hours of sleep. But let me ask you, when's the last time you got 8 hours of some solid sleep? It's probably been a while, right?
It's been a while. It's always broken, because the phone, like you said, it's right next to me. And if it goes off, you check it, in the morning, the first thing you do is you check your phone, see if you have a message. Even if sometimes I meditate every day. And if I'm meditating and I feel the phone ringing or you feel it vibrate, it kind of breaks your meditation. So it's you should just take your phone away from your room at night and just throw it somewhere, put it in the living room, put it in the kitchen and just disconnect. And it's really hard for people to disconnect. And that's just the struggle because, we're all connected and I guess it's what you feed your brain with and what you follow and what and that's just what it comes down to.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, especially talking about throwing your phone, into another room or something. Mel Robbins actually talks about that in her book. And one of the things that she says is to put it in your bathroom. Even if you still use it for an alarm clock, put it in your bathroom. That way it's not right next to you. You have to get up, get out of bed to go turn it off. And then at that point you can start your day. You're not snoozing, you're not getting back into bed and, doing that whole thing. You're actually, just getting up and starting your day fresh. I actually have a little routine that I've built in for my phone, and that is it does stay in my bathroom. Okay. I do pick it up when I leave my room and I come downstairs, start my coffee, and then I go do my quiet time. And I've made a promise that I would not open this thing up, no matter how many times it's flashing, what kind of notifications I got on it, until I'm done with my quiet time, which is usually about a 30 to 45 minute period. And then I start my day. And so for me, that helps in just structuring my morning, and it gets me going off on the right foot, just like meditation does. If you just do that before you get your day going or whenever that fits into your routine, then that's beneficial and it'll pay dividends in the long haul.
When did you start this routine?
It's probably been just about 2 years ago when I read the book by Mel Robbins, and that was kind of something I was like, you know what? Yeah, both my wife and I did it, and so there's still times that we'll pick up the phone and crawl back into bed, and it's still sitting next to us. Don't get me wrong, right? But we definitely try to do that.
How about what do you do during this quiet time?
Man, okay. Well, for me, I do a couple different things. I got a couple business books I'm reading, and so I'll do that. But I also just pick up my Bible. For me, I try to read a chapter a day. Spend a little bit of time, praying, quiet time with Him. Maybe even just quiet and listening and trying to be still to see what's going on. What do I need to work on? And then I go into my reading. And then at that point, my kids are up, everybody's downstairs, and it's time to get moving for the morning. And so, but that's kind of what I do.
How has that helped you in your life? To shape your day on a daily basis? And if you have a goal or something, how has it helped you accomplish that?
Well, it keeps me grounded. It keeps my purpose in line, keeps me focused on the end goal of what I believe my purpose here on this earth is for. And I think we all have a purpose, and it's not, and even if you don't think you have one, man, you have a purpose, and you got to be able to find that however you do that. You just got to be able to find it, because if you don't have that drive or that purpose, for your daily life. That can be in business, profession, or, any profession, athletic, or even in your home life, or in a faith-driven part of your life. And so, it keeps me grounded and keeps me pointed in the right direction, man. And let me say this. Let me, give you a little disclaimer. I'm not perfect. I still fall short. It definitely doesn't mean that, there's days that I could read something and be like, I have no clue what that says. God, you seem so far away from me right now. I don't know what you're doing. I wrestle with him too, man. I've had, so many conversations with him where I'm just, saying some things that most people probably wouldn't repeat, and just wondering, what is it, but I think that keeps me grounded and that keeps me focused, man. And so it just kind of brings me back to, my purpose.
All right, let's go back in the time. Let's go back to the 80s. We're going to go back to you touched on this earlier in our discussion. You're a little rebellious, a little bitter. We talked a little bit about Run DMC, the Beastie Boys.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Talk about what would you do that was rebellious? What made you bitter?
Sorry, say that again.
Well, what made you bitter, and what are some of the things that you did that were rebellious?
Oh, okay, that's deep. That's a deep question. I would have to say, and I really do hate saying this because I think it's been used too many times, but being from a broken home, man, I was 8 years old. I don't remember much of prior to 8 years old, from 0 to 1. I don't remember much. It's from 8 years old on, I remember. And there was a good couple of years that, my dad was non-existent. My mom was just hustling, trying to work and provide for us. And so she was working a retail job. She was a manager. So, she was 40 plus hours a week in a mall. And so she wasn't home much either. And so, we did what every other kid does. We find things to keep ourselves busy. Sometimes those things aren't exactly what we want. And I found myself, going to, parties and hanging out with older people. And, we were drinking, smoking, doing drugs and doing things at 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. My dad was a smoker. And so I thought, no big deal. I smoke and, this kind of stuff. And so I did, I ran with a crew of guys. So some of them I'm still good friends with nowadays, man. We've all grown up and got kids, so we're a little different now. Right.
Absolutely.
But there was times, man, where I was home alone for hours on end after school. And, I don't want to use it as an excuse, but I'd find things to do to keep myself busy. And I have an addictive personality, which is kind of something that's not good and good all at the same time. It's right. I struggled quite a bit, even into my early 20s with, I had some great success coming right out of high school. So during high school and stuff, I didn't play any sports. I like I said, I was hanging out with my older buddies, going to parties, doing this kind of stuff. And, I found myself not knowing what I wanted to do in life, right? You hit that sophomore year in high school and everyone's like, what are you going to do? Where are you going to school? And, all this kind of stuff. What's your plan? What's your purpose, right? I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm going to go back to home and drink a 40 and, smoke a joint or something. That's what I'm going to do. But I also knew something inside of me was just burning, like, this isn't you. This is not your purpose. And, and I got saved when I was 13, got baptized when I was 13, but, I don't think I really lived what we would call a true faith until later on in life. And that's okay. I still know that God came into my life and was living with me, during that time, but, I was doing my own thing. I was, black sheep, if you will. And so right out of high school, my wife and I have been friends and dated since we were like 11 or 12. So we've been together almost half our lives. We just celebrated our 15th wedding anniversary at the end of August. Wow. So, man, it's been 15 years of wedded bliss for sure. But we have a long history. And so in high school, we were dating in our senior year, and I still didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I had a cousin that was he was in the military and he was in the Coast Guard. And so I started talking to him and, checking out the Coast Guard as being an option, because I wasn't definitely a Marine type guy. I didn't want to be, I wasn't an Army type guy. And so I went with, what they say is the lesser of the group. And I don't mean any disrespect by that, because I think that those guys work hard too, and that they're just as good as the Marines or anybody else. But I think there's a different level. At least there was. And so I started to look that route, but I was just like, man, that's still not me. I'm not feeling it. So I talked with Andrew's dad one time, and he was a CTO of a large home builder out here in Southern California. And he's like, he came to me and said, hey, what if I can get you an internship and see where that goes in computer stuff, networking and stuff. And I was like, I could do that. And so he worked at he worked it up to create a position for me. And I interned for about 6 months at this large Fortune 500 company, learned a tremendous amount. And then as soon as I got, after that 6-month time was up, I got hired on permanently as a network or a desktop technician. And so then I started to go get certified through Microsoft and get my network administrator stuff and all kinds of stuff, and started to work my way up, and was there for, a couple of years, from like age of 18 till just about 20. I worked there. And then I landed a job at another large company, and they do a lot of title searches and title stuff here, actually across the nation. And I became a contractor, and at the age of 20, I was clocking 50 grand a year in contracting money. And man, that was awesome, right? I mean, I was just living it, right? I mean, I had no bills besides my truck payment and a $300 a month room rent, and I was just living it. Started to hang out with some people, some friends at the time. And, we started to get into some things that we probably shouldn't have. And, I got introduced to meth. Man, that took me for a ride, bro. That really took me for a ride. I ended up, I call it my 2-year roller coaster ride. I started really high, right? I was in the perfect spot as a young kid, great job, making really good money, living the life. I just, was loving it. And then got introduced to meth, and it just kind of went like this for a while, right? I had some good times, had some bad times. And then, I hit what I call the depth, or almost to the bottom of my life. There was a little bit further I had to fall to get there, but I ended up one time, I got blamed for something at work, one of my responsibilities, and my boss wasn't coming to talk to me about it, but everybody else was talking about it, so I was getting really mad. And so I went on a bender one weekend, hadn't slept for the entire weekend, rolled into work high as a kite, and somebody said something to me, and I just flew off the handle, and I walked right into his office, shut the door, and just basically told him off. I mean, that's really what I did. And at the end of the conversation, I took my badges and my keys, and I set them on his desk, and I said, "I quit, I'm done." And he looked at me, and I remember the look and the words he said to me, because it was like a light bulb going off. And he kind of looked at me, regardless that I was yelling at him, calling him names and cussing him out. He's, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I think what he was saying was, "Man, I know the situation you're in. You're a young cat in a great position, great job. Like, can't we work through this?" And he didn't know I was on drugs at the time. Or at least he didn't tell me. He might've known. I was definitely pretty messed up. And I walked out. I said, "Yeah, I'm done, man." I walked out. So I walked away from that and went straight to my dealer's house. And then, wouldn't you know it, I started hanging out with my dealer. He didn't have a car, so I was driving him everywhere, and doing all kinds of stuff that we shouldn't be doing, living in hotel rooms on stolen credit cards, and, all kinds of stuff, man. And found myself, right? I mean, you're guilty by association, but you're also, the people you hang around with is kind of like, that's what's going to happen to you, right? Like, even if you're not doing it, like you're part of that. And so those influences around you, and I don't blame them or blame anybody. I take it all upon myself that I was the one that made my choices, but it still influenced me. And I allowed myself to be in that situation. So I found myself in a situation that, we did some things that we shouldn't have done, and knew that the police were looking for me. They showed up to my mom's house. My mom calls me like, "Why do I have Sheriff so-and-so showing up to the house?" And, and I'm like, "Don't worry about it, Mom. No big deal." But then I had a kind of a come to Jesus moment, probably a couple weeks after my mom had received that call. And I knew that, I had been on some serious benders and not slept for days. And I have this connection with the ocean for some reason, man. I love the beach. I love the ocean. And so one day I drove down there and spent probably about 6 hours just sitting on the beach, and having a conversation with God, or just talking to him, and just, crying out to him, going, "Man, this is not what I expected for my life. This is not what I wanted." And he kind of just, not audibly or anything, but he just kind of just told me, like, "I got a purpose for you. But you have to do something about it. Like, it's your choice," right? He gives us free will. It's your choice to believe in me, not to believe in me. He doesn't put that on anybody. He doesn't make you do that. It's completely on you. And so, you know, I knew what I needed to do at that point. I needed to go turn myself in. And so I called up my girlfriend, called up my mom, asked my mom if I can come home for a couple of days to kind of get sober. My mom was kind of like, I'm not sure. Cause you know, me and her relationship wasn't great. So my girlfriend was like, look, I'll put you up in a hotel for 3 days. You know, you can sober up and go from there. And man, I'll tell you what, those 3 days were crazy.
I was about to say, what was the feeling? What was going through thoughts, feelings?
Oh man, everything, man. I was curled up in a ball and sweating. I was, you know, all of the physical withdrawals, and then the mental comes with that, right? Is, you know, what, you know, just wanting to go back and get a fix or wanting to get out of this hotel room. And I was staying in this like no-tell motel kind of thing. I don't know if you get my drift. Like, you know, it was a hotel it had every channel was like pornography, and then it had mirrors on the top, right? So like I'd wake up, you know, in the middle of the night shaking and looking up and seeing myself and just going like, wow. My girlfriend would just come in and drop food off and she'd disappear. But those 3 days, man, I just kind of sobered up. And then on that fourth day, I, you know, literally walked into the sheriff's office and said, hey, my name's Adam DeCorte, and I'm here to turn myself in. And the person was kind of like, okay. And she went and got an officer that was kind of on my, you know, listed on my case, and brought me into a room, and he's like, so why are you here? And I'm like, well, I'm here to turn myself in. So we went through this whole process, and, you know, I got booked, and I only ended up spending 29 days in jail. But I'll tell you something, you know, my dad, he had some problems when he was younger too. And my second week in, my middle brother came to see me, and we sit down in the visiting thing, right? And we, you know, windows and to pick up the telephone, and he proceeds to tell me, he's like, hey man, like, do you know, like 2 seats down from here, I came and visited dad like 10 years ago when he was in jail. And I was like, what? You know, and I knew my dad had been in jail a couple times for fraud and stuff, which is essentially what I was put in under. I pleaded down, and there was some other things that happened, but and when he said those words to me, man, my heart fell, my heart sank. I was like, are you kidding me? Like I'm repeating my dad's life, basically. And so oddly enough, when I got out, I actually searched, because it's public records. I searched and found out where my dad was at, what cell block he was in, where he got transferred to. And wouldn't you know it, I was in the same cell block as him. I was in the same like location that he was in. And I was at the 2 places where I stayed. I was in the same place that he was at. And so, you know, man, I tell you what, God sent me a messenger while I was in there. And I know that sounds a little crazy, but there was a pastor that actually got thrown in jail for domestic violence. Him and his wife had gotten into an argument. He had tossed a plate at her, and she called the cops on him. So he came walking in, man. And let me tell you, when he came walking in, it was like the angels were singing to me. It's like, oh, like no joke, bro. And so I was just drawn to him, and he came right over to me, sat down, we started talking. And he, you know, he gave me this name of this book called Bondage Breaker. And he kind of laid out what it was about, but it was about breaking those bonds that we don't know exist, but are on us from generations, or generations ago to present, and how to break those bonds. And those are things like even like addictions, or things that, you know, get passed down genetically to us. You know, how do you combat those things? You know, just because your parents are obese doesn't mean that you have to be obese, even if it's in your genes, quote unquote. You know, there's stuff that you can do to break that cycle. And this before I had kids, this before I was married, before I even like thought about having kids. And I just knew this wasn't me. I just wasn't living the life that I was supposed to live. And so that jail time, man, was crazy. I saw some stuff that I wish I hadn't seen, some, you know, fights and things like that. And, you know, I just, you know, spent time, and I just said, okay, man, God, just keep me safe. And when I get out, I promise that, you know, and I made this promise to him over and over, but I promise that I will, you know, live the life that you want to live, or that you have for me. And so, man, I got out like 2 or 3 days after Easter of 2001. And I went straight back to the beach. It was one of the first things I did when I got my truck back and got my license back and stuff. So I went straight back to the beach, and I just spent, you know, another 6 hours in the same spot I did before, and just said, okay, you know, what is it? And I struggled, man. I was still going through addiction withdrawals. I still wanted to go back and do that. But I knew that I needed a change, and I needed a change of pace. I needed a change of place. And so I called up my brother who lived in Arizona, And I said, man, I really need to get out of California. Is there anything you can do for me? And he had a buddy who owned a business out there in the technology world. And so I said, look, give him a call, let him know, like, I'll come intern for him. I'll come live for free. I don't care. I just need to get out because I'm buttoned up against these feelings that I know I'm not strong enough by myself right now to deal with. And so I wanted to just give distance. And wouldn't you know it, the guy, we had a phone call and, I told him I was fresh out of jail and I was like, look, man, here it is. Jail, drugs, blah, 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 blah. Here's where I'm at. I want some change. What can you do? And he says, hey, come on out for an interview and we'll talk from there. And so my brother actually paid for my plane ticket out there, paid for my place to stay. And then, within a month I got hired and I moved out to Arizona. And that was the best move I made in my early 20s because it definitely put some distance between where I was at and what I was doing.
Did you find any of those same demons in Arizona when you got there?
Oh yeah, man. Demons they follow you, bro.
Yeah,
they don't disappear. Yeah. No,
yeah.
I had some demons to deal with for sure. But I felt like it was a better place for me to be in. And so I was able to fight them better during that time. And that's actually during the time that my wife and I kind of rekindled our relationship again. And she came out and visited me a couple times and just as friends, and she would leave and she would come back for the weekend and, we wouldn't, nothing would happen during that time. But there was one specific weekend that she came out and, she left to go back home and I didn't have a car at the time. And so she had to take a taxi. She took a taxi back to the airport and she calls me like an hour later and she's like, well, I'm coming back. I'm going to stay the night again. And I said, well, why? She goes, she was on the last flight out. Well, I guess there was a bomb scare at the airport. And so they had shut down all the airport and it was going to be a couple hours. And she's like, I'd rather just fly out in the morning. So she came back. And when she came back, we literally had that come to Jesus for conversation with each other. And I know this is so unromantic, but I looked at her and said, like, why are we not getting married? Like, let's just get married. Like, we're best friends. We definitely love each other. We like being around each other. Let's just get married. And so that was my initial proposal. Now, ladies, don't get too mad. I did sweeten it up a little bit later in the process. Yeah, I did do that, man. But yeah, man, that was a pivotal moment, I think, for me. One of those things I look back and go, it was a good choice for me to kind of distance myself. But like, the question you asked, and like I said, man, the demons, they still followed me. They were still there. And even to this day, I still have, like I said, I got an addictive personality. And so, there's a lot of things that I battle, on a daily basis. And that could, be from substances to checking this thing on a constant basis, because that's an addiction, man. There's no doubt about it.
It is. No, it definitely is. You're right about that.
Yeah.
It seems like, it's you've been on a journey in life. There's a lot of ups and downs in life.
Sure. And
there's a lot of smiles, cries. You've experienced a lot. And one that comes to mind in particular, what comes to your mind when you hear the date October 1st, 2017?
Whew. Yeah, man, that date's approaching really quickly next week. And that's been a little bit of a difficult thing, but, so yeah, that date will forever live in infamy in history, in my life and my wife's life and, 22,000 other people's lives. And so, let me back up just a little bit prior to that date so I can kind of set the table for it. And that is, like I said, my wife, she travels a lot, 3 kids, busy, life is life, right? My life does not compare to anybody else's out there because I know we all have our own struggles, demons in life that we've experienced. But we were in a season of just busyness, man. And my wife I would probably say she was that year, leading up into October, she probably traveled at least once or twice a month. And that was, a 3 to 4 day to possible a full week stint. Some of those were back to back where she'd come home on Friday night and leave on Monday. And so I was, working at the time, and I was in his ministry. And if any of those that have been in ministry before, that job is one of the hardest jobs that you will ever do, but it's the most rewarding. And I loved it at the time, but it was a stressful time there. My wife's gone, so I'm taking care of the kids. I'm running them, everywhere. I'm very lucky. I have my mom around and my in-laws are close. In fact, they actually live under the same house now. And so they're, constantly got a lot of help, but we were just in the season of passing each other in the halls. I don't know if that resonates with you, but we'd kiss each other in the morning, not see each other for a couple of days, and then see each other again. And it would be craziness would happen. Right. And so one of the things that we learned probably in the last 10 years of our marriage is that we had to set dates in the future for us to look forward to. If that was family vacations, or if that was a date night, or if that was, friends getting together over at our house with all the families, or whatever it was, we had to have something that we were looking forward to help us persevere through those weeks and those days of craziness. And we were in a very stressful time. And so we had this date of October, or it was really the end of September, that last weekend, where we had chosen to go to, my wife loves country music and wanted to go to this country music festival called Route 91. And it had been going on for, I think maybe this was their fourth concert that they had done. And it's a 3-day music festival, man, in Vegas. And it's just, huge, tons of acts and great stuff. And my brother, my oldest brother, and his wife and their friends had gone every year. And so we were excited because they were going to be there and we were going. And my wife had a couple coworkers and their spouses that were going as well. And so we were just looking forward to this, man. And I tell you, the weeks prior to that, we were very stressed out. I mean, my wife and I, we were butting heads. We weren't talking a lot. It was only, let's just discuss what we have to discuss, but we're not discussing anything else. And so we were really looking forward to it. And I actually told her 2 days before we left, there were some things that we needed to discuss and work out. And so I said, hey, look, I know that we need to do that, but I said, I want to take this weekend and I just want to be with you. I don't want to discuss our issues or our problems or our life. I just want us to enjoy each other and just enjoy each other's company and just reconnect, right? Just get that connection back before we try to figure everything out. And she agreed, which, for those of you that know my wife, that's hard for her to do, to kind of set something off to the side and go, okay, yeah, we'll come back to that, right? I'm the typical man. I'm like, let me sleep on it, honey. And she's like, no, we got to talk about it now, right? And so she agreed 100%. And man, we got in the car and we started driving to Vegas, and it's about a 4-hour drive. And we had the best conversation, man. We were laughing and listening to music and having a blast. And, we arrived in Vegas that Friday afternoon, and we just started to really just hang out and just be with each other. And like I said, my brother was there with his wife and a couple of their friends. Funny thing was that my brother didn't have tickets to the show. And so they were trying to scalp them Friday and Saturday and even Sunday morning. And so they weren't there Friday and Saturday. They didn't get tickets. And so we were hanging out with a couple of their friends. And then, like I said, my wife's coworkers she had coworkers with their spouses. We were hanging out with them and just having a blast, man. And we ran into some high school friends of ours that were there, and actually had some drinks with them on Saturday night. And we were just having the best time to go. And so to kind of set up the venue for you, it was a festival, 3-day festival. So there was no, there was an open standing area in front of the stage. And then there was VIP seats that had seats. And then there was this area in the back called a chair corral, where you could bring in your own chairs and set them up. And so you can sit down, cause the concert was like a 6-7 hour concert every day. And so my brother and his friends had brought chairs. And so my brother on Saturday was like, hey man, if we don't get tickets on Sunday, do you want our chairs? I was like, yes, I want your chairs, because my feet are hurting. I don't wear cowboy boots, but I borrowed some. And so I was walking around in these cowboy boots, man. My feet were just barking at me. They were hurting. And so I was like, yeah, I want your chair. So he calls me up Sunday morning. This was October 1st, or I'm sorry. Yeah, it was October 1st, I believe it was, that Sunday. And he says, hey, do you want my chair? And I said, yeah, I want your chair. Like, we'll come get them from you, or if you send them a Doug and Shell or whatever. And he kind of laughs and he's like, well, you're going to have to go buy your own, because, we got tickets. We're coming. I was like, yeah, right on, so excited. I mean, my brother and I never been to a concert before together. Right. And so was totally jazzed. And so we got ready and we went to the concert that day, and we had another great day. We hung out with my brother and them. And I have just recently started going through some of my pictures from that night. And there's an awesome picture that my brother and I took, just one of those things I look at, man, and I just go, how lucky we are. So fast forward through that night. And we get to it towards the end of the night, and it's the second act to the end until Jason Aldean goes on, which he was the headliner that evening and closing out the show. Yeah. And my brother was 2 weeks pre hip surgery or hip replacement. So he was on crutches. And so we'd been standing up almost the whole set, and he was like, hey, what do you guys think about heading back and maybe finishing the concert at the Chair Corral and just sitting down? And we were all like, yeah, let's go back and sit down. So we all left, and we went back and we sat down in our chairs and continued to have the concert or enjoy the concert. And then, about 10 o'clock, right around that time is when we started hearing some things that weren't quite normal that we should be hearing. And if you talk to anybody that was there, a lot of us will say that it sounded like firecrackers at first. We were pretty close to Las Vegas Boulevard as far as like on the side of the venue that we were on. And it sounded like firecrackers. And so, and we were in the very, very back of the venue. So we're like, probably 100 yards away from the stage. And there were still massive amounts of people standing there. If you look at any of the videos, people just massive amounts. And so we're watching this thing happen, and we're kind of like, what's that? And my wife's like, she's sitting next to me. She's like, those are gunshots. And I'm like, no, those aren't gunshots. Those are firecrackers, Well, the interesting thing is that we had right in front of us, there was a police officer talking to a gal. And I think that she was inebriated to the point where they were trying to find some help for her. So he was standing there waiting, what we think, for the paramedics to show. And I looked up and I said, if he goes somewhere, if he runs, then we run, right? Like thinking like, he's going to know what's going on. But after I said that, man, he was gone. And then we started hearing the hail of bullets rain down. The automatic fire started. And then prior to that, it was single shots. There was about 6 or 7 single shots, which sounded like firecrackers, like pop, 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 pop. And then when that started happening, the confusion, right? We're looking around like, what's that? And then we start seeing the crowd from the front of the stage start to we see mass amounts of people start running backwards and towards us. And then it was just the nonstop hail of bullets that started raining down, bro. And my brother's like, hit the deck. And so we all just went down on our chest. What the heck's going on? We don't know. All these things, people are starting to really freak out at this point. The whole venue is now, up in arms to, we all know that something's going on. Bullets are coming at people. So as we're on our hitting the deck and laying down, we're hearing bullets tinging off. So about like, I don't know, maybe 50 yards behind us, there was these metal, kind of like football stadium seats that they had set back in the very, very back. And we could just hear bullets just tinging off of them. So as I said, my brother was 2 weeks from having a hip replacement. So he was on crutches. Well, at the beginning of that night, he had actually drove to the 88 parking lot, and I hope no one gets in trouble for this, but he had asked the supervisor there, he said, hey, can I park over here? Like, I'm on crutches. I don't want to park, far away or at the hotels and walk across. The guy was cool and said, yeah, bro, no problem. You can park right here. So my brother tells us in the middle of the chaos, he's like, everybody needs to go straight out that gate and get to my truck. My truck's right there in the 88 parking lot. Get there and we'll bail. And so we all agreed that's our plan. So in there was, multiple times where there was a lull in the bullets, where people think that, there was, reloading or whatever was going on. But there was these pauses. And so during one of those pauses, we all agreed to get up and go. And so, it was one of my wife's coworkers and him and his wife, and then my wife and me, we got up and we started to run first. Well, I got about, 25 yards away, and I stopped and I realized that my brother's on crutches. He can't, and he's laying down. Like, he can't just get up easily and start running. So I paused, I turned back around and I look at my brother, and this was one of the first God moments I would say that happened to us that night. And I see his back, and he's, his buddy and his wife are trying to help him up. And I just had this moment of clarity, man, it was this voice of God, I would say, that said, stay with your wife. Your brother's going to be okay. I instantly turned. My wife had stopped. And so I was able to catch up with her. And then we continued to head out of the venue. When we got out of the venue, we hit a right onto Giles Street. And we stopped right there outside of the fence. And Tim, my wife's coworker, as bullets continued to fly down, was like, we need to continue to get away from the strip. We're like, I tried to look for my brother's truck, couldn't find it. We didn't look, but maybe a split second. And we just continued to run away from the strip. And luckily, my brother, they got to their truck. And when they got to their truck, they ended up having to huddle down in front of it because they had bullets coming out them. And this was behind the venue. And so they huddled down, got into their truck. They had people trying to climb in and, open the door. And he felt tremendously bad, but he was like, I have to go pick up 4 more people in this truck. And he already had 4 people in it. He's like, I can't take you. And so he was able to navigate through this parking lot with thousands upon thousands of people running and get out. He almost had to like run through a fence to get over because it just, there was no place to go. I mean, you have 22,000 people just going everywhere. And he ended up getting out. And his wife called me on the phone, where are you guys at? And by this time we had made it down to McCarran Airport, and we were running alongside McCarran Airport. And we are still hearing bullets flying down and are still hearing the shots. At this point, we start hearing, tons of sirens going on everywhere. And we're still going, what the freak's going on? I mean, we still didn't know, right? We knew that there was danger. We knew that we saw things as we were running, people going down and getting injured and trampled and all kinds of just craziness. But so my sister-in-law is like, hey, where are you at? So I tell her where she's at. And she's like, hey, we're on our way. We're flashing our lights as we're coming down the street. And man, it was like Dukes of Hazzard happened. I mean, it was like my brother's telling me the doors are unlocked, 2 of you in the back, 2 of you in the front. And in the back, they had the big cooler that was sitting there. And so he was warning us of that. Make sure you jump in. And literally I see him like down the street. I'm yelling at our friends like, hey, come on, get by us. And I'm telling Carrie and Tim, you're in the front, Andrew, me in the back. And literally he screeched his tires on the way up. Doors come flying open. We just kind of jump in, and before doors are closed, he's screeching on his way out. The second God moment I would say is that they were staying off strip at a timeshare condo about 15 minutes away from the strip. And so that's where we went. Now, my wife and I and everybody else, all of our friends were staying in the Luxor, which is right next to the Mandalay Bay. And that was not happening. Like, we're not going back there. It got all locked down, obviously. And so we went to this this condo, and we arrived there. And our night wasn't over yet because my wife had 2 other coworkers with their spouses that she had called once we got there to find out, are they okay and all this kind of stuff. And luckily they had gotten out and they were okay, but they were hiding in carports, hiding in a hotel room. And one of them checked into the Motel 6 and got a hotel room, and they were like literally laying on the floor because they were scared, about what's going on. And my wife looked at me and she's like, can we go get them and bring them here? And I was like, absolutely. So I looked at my brother and I'm like, we're going on a mission. And he's like, let's go. And so, I grabbed my, Tim, my wife's coworker's phone, cause he had all their contact information. They're dropping pins on where they're at. Cause I told them, like, don't stay where you're at. If you need to go, keep going. We'll get to you. We'll find you. And so we went back, picked up one couple, drove them back to the condo, went back and picked up another couple. And during those times, man, it was a moment we're looking as close to the strip as we can get. And we're just seeing ambulances and police cars still flying every which way, just the chaos that ensued. And I will say this, the first responders and the police officers, they did an amazing job that night for what they were given. And so we all went back, to the condo. We got everybody back there safe. Like I said, one of my addictions, I used to smoke back in the day. On the way back from picking up one of the couples, actually it was the last couple we picked up. I told my brother, I'm like, we need to stop at a convenience store. And he's like, why? And I'm like, well, just stop at the convenience store. And I broke down and bought a pack of smokes. And I smoked that whole pack that whole night. And then by the time my wife and I left, we were done. I was like, no more, and we crushed up the rest and throw them out. But, that night, bro, flipped our lives. In a way that I would never suspect that life can be flipped. And I'm not the only one to go through tragedy or go through an event in their life, that has done this. I'm sure there's plenty of people watching this podcast that have had a traumatic event in their life. Even losing a family member, right? Even to a natural causes is a traumatic event. And the grief that comes with that and the time of healing that comes with that is huge. And it takes everybody different amounts of time to do that. So that happened in October, man. And at the time I was working for my church and came home and took a leave of absence. And then basically at the end, right in January, towards the end of the year, we decided that it would be best for both of us to kind of part ways. And so I stepped away, resigned my position there. And then I was sitting there going, okay, what do I do? Right. I need to bring home some money to the family. Luckily, my wife, like I said, she's got a great job. She can sustain us, but I'm a man. I like to contribute something to the household. And so I'm like, what am I going to do? And years ago, I had started my own painting business, house or residential painting business. And so I thought, okay, maybe I just go back and paint. I just wasn't feeling like that, but I also was in a place in my life that it was dark, bro. When I was coming out of the addiction of meth, that was the darkest place in my life. But this rivaled that and almost surpassed it because of the feelings and things that came about. I'm a people person, man. I love people. I love talking to people. My wife always, she gets, embarrassed sometimes because I can sit next, on a plane and strike up a conversation with you. And, we can be talking about life and everything, anything in between. I found myself, curled up in my bed, pretty much sucking my thumb in a dark room, just losing my marbles. My wife and I knew that we needed to seek some counseling. And so we got some counseling for it, and that helped. But then there was some things that we were experiencing that we never experienced before, like anxieties, social anxieties. We could no longer, we're a family of faith. We couldn't go to church and sit in the service because of the crowd of people. There was just too many people. We became exit watchers. We were always constantly looking for an exit. And if there was a crowd, we would always scoot ourselves back and be on the fringes of that crowd. And that was not like us. That was, they say that if you have anxieties or some sort of feeling like claustrophobia or anything like that, when you go through a traumatic event, it'll heighten those senses. And for my wife, that definitely heightened her sense of everything that she had. So we sought counseling. And one of the things that we, learned during that time was, somebody said something to this and it resonated with me. It said, somebody threw you guys into a washer and put it on a permanent spin cycle, because we couldn't tell which way was up. Our ship was doing this, and we couldn't right it. We didn't know how to get back on that path. And I had a lot of anger and angst against where I just came from professionally and what had happened and transpired from me having to resign my position. And I was living in that filth, and I was just, I was not the person who even I am today and who I was before. And I experienced things that like I said, man, anxieties that hit that were just, life stopping. And so I started to look for ways to do that. I knew counseling was one of them. I didn't want to go down a pharmaceutical route because, like I said, I've had addictions in the past, and I didn't want to do that. I was trying to, shield myself from that. No qualms about those that seek the pharmaceuticals or that use pharmaceuticals for any, mental things. I think that it's there for a reason. But just myself, I just knew I just didn't want to go down that route. So, I was getting massages and I was, acupuncture and other things I was trying, other modalities I was trying. I'm a essential oil guy, our family is. And so I was trying to, use oils to calm myself down but I couldn't stop my brain. My brain just would not stop. I couldn't sleep. I was having night sweats. I was having nightmares, and between that night and I would say January, or I say actually all the way to February, I was a mess. Just a complete mess. I had things like I have 3 kids, right? When you have 3 kids in the house, it's loud, right? They're all playing their video games or playing music or talking and, this or that. And the TV's, I couldn't handle it. I had to have silence. I had to have, we were driving, and I had my kids in the car and can we turn the radio on? I'm like, nope. They're like, can we talk? I'm like, nope. Just silence.
I was going to say, how did that affect your kids? You and your wife going through a tragic event like that, and you have 3 kids and you have a household to run. How did it affect them?
Yeah, well, I would say for a while they kind of governed themselves. I think my wife and I were a little bit absent in that when we got back. But we, the next morning when we were driving home from Vegas, when we finally got when the Luxor came off lockdown and we were able to go back and get our stuff. And that was a weird experience. One day we could talk about that. But when we were driving home, we called, our parents and stuff. And my mom actually had our kids. And so we called my mom. We had texted her that night before just so that we knew that if she woke up and saw it on the news or whatever, we wanted her to know that we were okay. And so we called her and she's like, hey, I think you need to tell the kids what happened, because they were going to go to school that day. And, kids talk, kids see things in their household, they're going to hear about that something had happened, in Vegas. And so she's like, I think you need to tell the kids. And so we did, we got on the phone with them and we told them, we didn't, we sugarcoated it, but we didn't sugarcoat it because, we're real with our kids. We don't like, kind of sugarcoating a lot of things. Life is life, right? I mean, it's going to suck and it's going to be great all in the same breath. And so we told them about it. And I don't think my middle child and my youngest child didn't really get affected by it, but my daughter, my oldest daughter, she was real affected by it. She didn't want to leave our side when we got home. There's a story a couple months after that, we ended up having to return to Vegas for my youngest had a gymnastics competition. And it was our second time back to Vegas. And long story short, we had family there. My oldest daughter was going to sleep with my mom in her room, but we got a call, after, like 11 o'clock at night after everyone's asleep, and my daughter's hysterical. She is just hysterical. We're like, what's wrong? What's going on? And my mom's like, she just wants to be with you guys. So fine. So she comes over, to sleep with us. And we asked her, like, what's wrong? And she's like, I just want to be next to you guys. Cause we were in Vegas and she just did not have a comfortable feeling. And that's affected her even, now. I mean, I think we're out of the woods, if you will, with some of that kind of stuff. But for a while it affected our family quite a bit. And they didn't know what was going on with mom and dad. Right. I mean, there was times I was short. My fuse was like, or I had like no fuse. They could just look at me like, hi dad. I'd be like, be quiet. Don't say a word, but it was crazy, man. I'm a firm believer that we go through, experiences in life, not only to learn from them, but to also to maybe help others in that. And so that day that we went to Vegas for my competition was the first day I had floated. And I know we're going to talk about floating too.
Absolutely. We're going to get
there. And my friend told me, hey man, you're going to have the best sleep ever after you float. And so I was all excited. So the first time I floated was that Thursday morning, and then we drove to Vegas. And so all I was thinking about as my oldest daughter, who's very, very tall, she's 11 years old, decides to come to sleep in this one bed with me and my wife. And I'm thinking, I'm not going to get any sleep. Like, this is crappy. Like, I'm in Vegas. My daughter's next to me. Like, we're in a small king size bed, which we have a Cow King at home. So I'm used to the space. And I'm like, man, I'm going to be sleeping like this and it's going to suck. I got 4 hours of sleep, but the 4 hours of sleep were the best 4 hours I ever got in my entire life. And I know we'll get there. But
really?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I want to ask you, because you went through this event with not only your wife, but your brother, friends, and to go through something like this with a bunch of people, it's like, wow, like, yeah. It's like, what? You're like, oh, holy cow, like shit, really cool. Yeah, and then you guys all get back to this condo. What was it like in the condo? Was it like panic? Were you guys, I know you said you went and got a pack of cigarettes, but like, what was everyone saying? What was like, you trying to reach people and say, hey, we're safe, trying to figure out what happened?
Yeah, I actually have a picture of that night. We're all sitting in the living room of that condo. And there was, at the end of the day, I think there was, so there's like 12 of us, I think, that ended up back at the condo. And the mood was very somber and very concerned. We were all still going like, what the F just happened? And we're watching the news and things are starting to come out. But what we did know is that there was a mass shooting that had happened. One of the couples that was with us ended up hiding under a big like Budweiser truck, like a big rig, like a trailer of a big rig that they were storing beer and stuff in. And they ended up having one of the victims thrown under the truck on them. And so they had blood just all down their back and stuff like that. And there was a lot of shock. You talk about shock and awe, like there was a lot of shock and awe. We're all on our phones trying to communicate to our families, that we're okay. We all had other people that we knew that were there. So we're trying to contact them, make sure they're okay. And it was a weird night, but I'll tell you what, there was, probably about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, we decided to turn off the TVs and everybody was kind of like, we going to try to sleep. So we just kind of all found a spot and curled up and I don't know if we slept. I think I did fall asleep, but kind of in and out of sleep for a little bit. And then, woke back up and started checking social media and, trying to find out more that was going, what had happened, and I think until that next morning, nobody really knew the scale of what transpired. I mean, we knew it was big, and we knew that something messed up had happened. And so I would say, it was a somber,
Have you had the
heavy.
opportunity to get together with those people?
Yeah, we have. Absolutely. My brother, obviously we see each other quite a bit. We've gotten together a couple times there. I would say that one thing that's came out of this event is that there's been a lot of community that's came about. So there's a ton of Facebook groups out there for survivors, for all different areas of the nation, because, there's a lot of people, but there's a lot of people from Southern California because Vegas is so close to us. And, one or two of the victims actually live in my hometown with their family and stuff. And one of the ones that have passed away. And so we've, there's a lot of things going on, but we got together, a month or so after it had happened and talked about how we're doing and, all kinds of stuff. And we support each other in any which way we can. This, as we approach this anniversary, my brother and a lot of people we know are heading back to Vegas for there's a lot of events that are going on in Vegas next weekend for October 1. And, they're going. Unfortunately, we can't make it because we have schedules with kids and soccer games and stuff to get to. So we can't do that, but we're looking to get together with a couple of our friends and maybe even head down to one of the country bars out here in California that's kind of done a lot of support for the Route 91 victims and survivors and stuff. But, I think that's, if there can be a good thing that comes out of the bad, which I always think there's got to be something good that comes out of everything that's bad. At least that's my hope anyways, is that there's been community and on a daily, you see people supporting each other, especially right now. You don't realize this. And I didn't realize this until I saw a post come through where somebody had just said, hey, is anybody having nightmares and anxieties? Like all of a sudden, like they were okay, and all of a sudden they're back. And as we approach our 1 year anniversary, those things start to dredge back up. I had this for the longest time in between that stretch of October 1 and January. I was on my laptop and I was diving into every single article that was written about it, every single video that was posted, from the mainstream media to the underground media. I was following it all, and I was trying to, find answers and trying to find, the whys and the whats and the hows. And I was just in this dark place. So that's all I did all day long was just search YouTube videos and search articles and all this stuff. One thing that's unique about it though, when you talk to other survivors, even my wife, who we were shoulder to shoulder from the moment it started to the end of it, was we experienced different things. We saw different things. And so our experience is not the same. And even when my wife and I were going through counseling and we were having our individual, even though we were there together, like the counselor would be speaking to us individually, we'd be telling our own story. It was night and day from the differences of what we saw, what we experienced, the things we heard, the things that we smelt, tasted. I mean, everything was completely different. And so getting together with fellow survivors and hearing their stories and what they've gone through and their experiences even post that date, it's been helpful for me. And so what I started to do, man, is I started to vlog about it. I just really started to go, man, I want to talk about this mental thing that I'm dealing with. And, you can't turn on the news right now without hearing mental awareness, right? That there's, things going on and that, everybody's, got some mental thing happening and all these events that take place. They always find these guys that got some sort of, mental issues, or they in the past they have, or whatever, and they want to point it at the pharmaceuticals and say, oh, they were on this type of drug and maybe that's why, or whatever. I don't know why, or what would make somebody do those things. I can only speculate. But the one thing I do know is when your brain gets messed up, it's hard to write that shit, man. My brain got messed up. I was angry and I was depressed and I was scared to walk outside. I was, scared to go to the grocery store and scared of, you would hear a loud noise, and it would just set you off. My wife travels a lot, and for her to get on an airplane in a crowd of people and know that there's only one exit in and out, that was stressful for her, and that set her off. And, getting introduced to PTSD, I have a compassion for people that have been diagnosed with that or have dealt with that. Even our soldiers, it's like, you hear about, soldiers coming back and dealing with PTSD. And I had compassion for them before, but man, let me tell you what, my heart beats for them now. I talk about compassion. Like, I understand to a small degree of when your life gets flipped and it's a traumatic event, how you can become mental. You become a mental case. There's no doubt about it. But I'll go back to, I knew when I got out of jail, when I was in jail, God's like, I got a purpose for you and a plan for you. And when I started to snap out of my mental situation I was in and holding on to that truth, I started to right my ship a little bit. I started to come back to life a little bit. I started to come back to like, okay, hey, crazy things were still happening. We still couldn't go be comfortable in church. We still couldn't go and go to the movie theaters or, gosh, man, we went to the movies after that. And there was this gentleman that walked in late after the thing and he got on his phone. He was on his phone for 30 minutes. All I could think of, what is this guy doing on his phone? Why is he on his phone? Why did he come in here late? Like, my brain's just like going on. And yes. There's still times now, man, I got some dark thoughts that run through my head when we're in an open space and things like that. And my heart starts to pound and I'm like, well, man, if somebody came in here with a gun, like, we could all be screwed. You know what I mean? Like, and those thoughts never crossed my mind before. And so now I deal with that. That's constantly in the back of my head.
It's hard.
But yeah, being around other people, is such a relief though, when you can talk about it and they're like, somebody will post something and they're like, man, I had a nightmare last night, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, I've been struggling with the same thing. And, that community that we get, cause we experienced it, even though we experienced it differently, we experienced the same thing. And sometimes you can't connect. It's why soldiers sometimes, right, want to go back into the war. They want, after coming home and they're like, they want to go back because that's the only way that their mind is conditioned to be able to, allow themselves to live a life, is that they're like, I just want to go back because that's what I know is normal. And so it's like, when you come out of that, it's like, what's normal? Well, a lot of people say that, this is my new normal that I'm living now. And yeah, there's some truth to that, but there's also some truth that you can go back and find the person that you were before, but it takes a lot. And you need some help doing that, either from friends to family to counselors to something in faith or meditation, something that just helps right your brain. And I had never been like that before. Never had my brain just not stopped and constantly go and worry and, all these things. And so then I found floating in January. My end of January, beginning of February. I was sitting in my backyard having a couple drinks and cigars with some really close friends of mine. And I was talking to them about what I was experiencing, what I was feeling and what I was going through. And one of my buddies just says, hey man, you need to go float. And I'm like, float? What is this float thing? What are you talking about? So I got on my phone, right, and Googled it and saw some videos and read a little bit about it. And I was like, I'm willing to try anything right now to get my brain and my body to stop. Man, I had so much tension in my neck. My shoulders were up here and I could not get them to relax. And I was having headaches to the point where by like 8, 9 o'clock at night, my eyes were hurting so much and my head was hurting. I'd have to close them and just go to bed. Well, I got 3 young kids, man. And when daddy's going to bed at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, they're going like, what's wrong with you? Right.
Yeah.
And
that doesn't work.
Yeah, that doesn't work, man. And I'm missing out, right? I'm missing out on time with them and stuff. And so I again, it was just looking for something to right my ship. And so that next Thursday, all 3 of us went and floated. And it was an experience, man, that changed my life from that moment on.
Really?
And it gave me a spark, and it gave me another factor in my reason, in my whys and my purpose in life. And that was, I said, man, if this worked for me, like this is going to have to work, especially for the 22,000 people that I know that are dealing with the same stuff I'm dealing with. Right. And so, and I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I've started my own businesses before, all this kind of stuff. And I just looked at my buddies, no joke. We're sitting in this room before we left. And I'm like, why are we not talking about opening up our own center? Like, let's look into it. Let's see what, if this is a viable business, right? I mean, obviously you want to make some money and you want to do some stuff, and so, man, I dived head first, didn't even test the water, started, I got home, and my videos and the articles I was searching for prior to that about the event faded away because I had a new purpose. I had a new drive. I had something else I was looking for. And if you talk to my wife, she'll tell you, like, man, when I don't have that, I'm the darkest, deepest, little sad clown, and I can bring the room down because yeah, it's like black,
cloud.
Yeah, exactly. Just this like destruction of of an existence, and she saw me turn, and she saw me start to come back. And it was not only, I think, because I had a drive that I want, something else I wanted to do, and a little project, if you will, that kept my mind busy, but I continued to float, and I floated probably that first month or two. I think it was about it was like almost every other day, at least twice a week, I was floating.
Really? For
an hour at a time. And every time I floated, I ended up becoming more relaxed. My brain started to slowly slow down. I was able to think clearly. I was able to, put two thoughts into a complete thought and not just be scrambled. And it changed my life, man. And so when I found out that, there was not a lot of sinners around us, that we had to drive, I'm in Southern California. So, everywhere is 45 minutes to get to without traffic. And then you add traffic on there and it's like 2 hours to get there. Right.
Trust me, I know.
Yeah.
I know how traffic rolls out, especially out that way.
Right. And so there was a handful of centers out here in California that are float centers, but they're all 45 minutes away. And I just started thinking, like, why are they 45 minutes away? How come there's not one closer? We could do this. We could put one closer. I'm in the Inland Empire of Southern California, and I'm like, the Inland Empire, like, we could use it, like we could do it. And so, I started diving into it, man, and going, trying to find numbers and connecting with center owners. And I started to float more often and, dive into the science behind it. And that's when I really, really, really just said, okay, this is legit. This is not a snake oil that somebody's selling. This is not a fad. And so I'll get into a little bit of the science of it. So everyone can understand why this has been so beneficial to me.
Well, can I ask you?
Sure, go ahead.
I want to ask you one last question about the event, and it's about the original reason why you went out there. Obviously, you went out there to have the celebrate the festival.
Sure.
But you and your wife were disconnecting from the stresses in life, and you're like, let's just go out there and have this weekend. What's your relationship now with your wife after going there that weekend and experiencing this event, and then now you finding floating? Does she float as well?
She does. Yeah. She's not as often as I do, but she does. Yeah. It's a great question. We had the best weekend, man, all the way up until that night, just enjoying each other, for not looking at each other like, you left your clothes on the floor. Now I'm all pissed. Like, we didn't let any of our normal day-to-day stuff and even the big things we were dealing with affect us. We just truly reconnected that weekend and had an awesome time reconnecting. And then going to that event, we've actually said many times that we're thankful that both of us were there together, because we don't know if she was there and I wasn't, if I would understand what she went through. And I'll tell you, I wouldn't. And nobody can. Even those of us that were there together, again, like I said, we all had the same experience but different. And so even our effects are different. Her senses and things, she's more affected by it than I am. I can stand in the back of a crowd. I might get a little anxious, but I'm okay, where she's like, no, I got to go. I got to step out. I got to be away, type of a thing. But I'll tell you what, going through that together has brought us closer. We did find a new respect for each other. We found a new love for each other. We found, that we can rely on each other more than we ever thought possible. Sorry, my dog came up to me. Go lay down. He stuck his nose on me, wants me to pet him. But so I would say, man, yeah, we're definitely closer than we were before. It doesn't make our relationship any easier, right? We're still a married couple that butts heads.
Yeah.
But we do have a little bit more of a found like some grace with each other. Like, we know, like, there's times, especially in between me floating, I have about a 10 to 12 day float time, like where I by 8th, 9th, 10th day, my shoulders start rising up. I'm shorter on my fuse. Even my kids will tell me, like, you know, I'll like maybe snap at them and they're like, "Hey Dad, when's the last time you floated? Maybe you should go float." But you know, yeah, man, it's brought us closer together for sure. You know, it definitely has, you know, going through when you have to run for your life.
Yeah.
And I mean, literally run for your life. That experience bonds people together. You know, even those that are with us, that were with us that night, we have a bond that nobody will be able to break, and that nobody will be able to understand. And for the longest time that we had group text messages going on, you know, where we were just, you know, hey, checking in on each other. How you doing? What's going on? You know, how are you feeling today? You know, those type of things. And I even think for my wife, you know, when one of us experiences those anxiety moments when we're together, we have so much grace and love for each other that we wouldn't have had before. We would have been like, "Hey, why are you so grumpy? Deal with it. Like, you know, smile a little bit, or don't snap at the kids or whatever." Where now it's like, you know, we see that, we're like, okay, we'll even like, "Hey kids, like, let's stay away from Dad for a little bit. Let's give him some space." Or, you know, like, "Hey kids, let Mom have her space." Or, you know, especially if we've traveled or something like that. But, you know, going back to the kids too, because we involved them in this conversation. We didn't hide any of our conversations from them. You know, and we took them back to Vegas. Gosh, I want to say it was, I don't even remember the date. It might've been about a month or so after. It was right before they moved all the crosses that were sitting in the entrance to Vegas on Vegas Boulevard. And we took them back, just did like literally a turnaround day. One Sunday morning, we were like, "Let's go to Vegas." And we took the kids, and we walked our path of escape. And then we took them back to the venue, and we took them to where all the crosses were. And we cried with them. We hugged them. We allowed them to see what was going on with everybody else that was there too. We didn't shelter them or hide that from them, because this is life, man. Life is real, and life sucks sometimes. And sometimes, you know, life sucks and it happens to you, and you're like, "Why is this happening to me?" You know, I mean, we're grateful that we weren't physically shot or physically hurt. But the mental chess game that we have to play now is hard. And when we look at our kids, we go, "Man, they're just as vulnerable as we are." And we want them to experience that. You know, and you know, I don't know, even coming, like, as thoughts come into my mind that, you know, I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty sure that even your school districts, right, they go through active shooter training now. And it's like out here in California, we had earthquake drills, right? And that was the only drill that we ever did when I was in school. And now it's like, you got earthquake drills, fire drills, and active shooter drills. And, you know, they're teaching the kids to huddle, you know, and lock doors and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, and like, I freak out about that sometimes. I'm like, man, you know, I tell our teachers this, my kids' teachers this all the time. I'm like, I'm thankful for who you are. And I give them so much love and grace, because those are the people that are going to be with our kids when shit goes down. Right. And their lives are on the line just as much as a police officer these days. And I hate saying that. I don't think it's right. And I hate saying that, but that's just the world we live in. So sorry, I went on a little tirade there.
No. I mean, these things are happening all the time. And it's just too many of these events, these mass shootings, and it's kind of like people sometimes, I think, are just like numb to it. You hear it, and you're just like, oh, like, it's just not like national news. Whether it could be like just in Maryland, there was 3 people just recently shot at a business. Like, people just kind of like glance over that, like, no, like, that's I don't know the full story of it. But that's a shooting, like, that's like there's an issue there. Like, these things are just happening more and more. And I don't want to dive into that. That's a whole nother discussion.
Sure, right.
But that's just like those things that happen. Like for instance, you went through like probably the worst shooting on this U.S. soil. And if for someone that went through something like this and to see this happen again and again and again, I can only imagine like the triggers that brings up for you mentally.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. Those are one of the things, you know, you turn on the news and you see that. And I'm a news junkie. I do, man. I have apps on my phone, and I'll turn on the news, you know, morning and evening and whatever. Although I've learned to not do that, because I realize that I am a junkie to it. And I think, man, who was it? I don't know, somebody who's out there in the vlogosphere or something like that talked about, when something happens in the world, somebody's going to tell me about it. So I don't need to worry about like checking the headlines. And I've tried to implement that into my own life. And although when I do hear about shootings or mass events like that across the world, I do have a newfound feeling or respect for the victims or those that go through it. I think the mass shooting that happened before October was the one out by you, I think, the Pulse nightclub shooting.
Yeah, in Orlando. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was what was crazy was some of those survivors actually flew out to Vegas to help out those survivors out in Vegas, those that were local and stuff.
Wow.
And I just thought like, it's true. Only a small sect of people really understand what it's like to go through that experience. And I'll tell you what, man, when it happens at schools, as jacked up as that is, I feel for those kids because I can't deal with the things like that I'm dealing with, and I'm an adult, right?
Yeah, you'll never be right.
Yeah.
It's just, kid, no person or kid should have to go through anything like that. Sure.
Absolutely.
And just the community, like that community and the victims and their families that they have to deal with, and the survivors coming from Orlando over to Vegas, that just shows you that's like the America that we should be living. That should be
right. Have some compassion for all of us, right? Like regardless of where you're from, what you believe, how you think, or what you don't think, or it doesn't matter. Compassion, I think that was something that we felt after, when you really dive into the stories of that night. And there's a production company that's a film company that's shooting a film, a documentary about it. But when you start hearing, all about all those people that were there and stayed there to help people, to drag people that were shot away from the shooting, or to stay with people because they were shot, or whatever it was, or people, commandeering trucks and throwing people and taking them to the hospital, and all these things. And people, like, when you ask them, like, how come you did it? And they were like, it was instinct. It's just something, and we all have this fight or flight instinct. And regardless of your training you have, mentally, or if you're like a soldier that was there, or an off-duty police officer that were there, they still, some of them flew, they ran, and some of them stayed to help. And you can't control that. That's something that you can sit here and go, oh, I would stay and I would help for sure. You don't know that till you're in that situation, man, if you're going to run or if you're going to stay and fight. And I thought about that now, like one of the thoughts that run through my head, like what would happen if we're in that situation again? Would I stay or would I go? And I don't know what I would do. Yeah, you just don't know.
Yeah, you don't know. No one knows.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I said, it's just instinct. Let's shift over to community. Let's talk about the Hustle Island.
Yeah, right on.
How did you find Hustle Island? Yeah,
so it was through Instagram actually, and that was done. I think I don't know if I saw an ad come through, or if it was somebody's post, and I can't remember if it was the ad that came through, like with the picture of the shirt on it. And I love shirts, man. I love shirts that make a statement. And so I was like, what? Hustle? That's sweet. I like that shirt. And it was like, I think it was the, get your free Hustle shirt or whatever. And the Hustle community was just launching at that time. And so I messaged somebody, I don't remember even who it was, and said, how do I get involved I want to be a part of the Facebook group that you guys are launching. And I went onto the website and I got my Hustle shirt, my free Hustle shirt at the first time, and was excited about it. And then and really it was a shirt that got me. That's what drew me in. I was like, oh, I like that. Like, that's cool. I can wear that. And then when I found out what the community was about, I was like dumbfounded, man, when I started seeing all the stuff that Greg was posting, and I saw some of his videos that he had done in the beginning. And just, the reason why he created this community, and it fell right in line with just my beliefs, especially right now, just knowing that community is huge. And when you can rely on a group of people to help you through something, or give you advice, maybe, for those that have walked a path before you and you're walking that same path, mentorship is huge. From where the industry I came from, having a mentor is huge. And I think that it's important that you have people to look to that have walked that path before you, and can offer you guidance. And there's tons of coaching networks out there, and there's tons of resources out there and books and things that all talk about the same thing that Greg has created with the Hustle community. But there's a couple things that I find that are different. And one of the things I find that are different is that he's connecting us with like-minded people that have these experiences at either a fraction of the cost or no cost. And I feel that's given back to people like no other, right? I mean, it's one thing I love about Bill Gates, about his foundation right now. And like, even the fact, like, his kids aren't going to receive any of his money because he wants them to earn it. But two, they started the foundation. And one of the reasons why he started the foundation is he feels that he's been blessed so much that he has a duty to help whoever he feels he needs to help out in the world. And he's willing to put his own resources behind that, or his own experiences behind that, for little to no cost. And I think that that's huge. And so, definitely the shirt caught my eye. And when I started to hear about the connections that were happening, and getting into that group, especially with me, it was right about the same time that I was starting to look at starting a new business. And I've started the business before, but that's so different when you can start a painting business. Cause it's like, okay, I got the skill to paint. I can go have a Facebook page and I can go start painting, get a license from the local town, and, got my DBA and all these things and whatever. But I've never started a true, legit brick and mortar business, which I know day and age, like, why are you starting a brick and mortar business? But unfortunately, it's just the industry I find myself in now.
Yeah.
But
you don't have a choice.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
We're not virtually floating just yet, but that might come soon.
Yeah, right. Yeah, sure.
How about how has the community in Hustle Island and Greg, how have they helped you with your business now? Because we're going to get into floating. I'm going to dive into that.
For sure. I would say it's honestly, man, it falls on this shirt. The biggest thing that I've had is the shirt and stickers. You can't see it on my laptop. I have a Hustle sticker there. Like I said, I got 2 Hustle shirts. I got another one on the way. Actually, I got 3 because I got another one. But what this reminds me to hustle every day, to have that perseverance, to do that, and to continue along my hustle and my reason of why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I think it's just the motivation that I see on a daily basis. And even, when I log on to Facebook and I scroll through and I see other hustlers, posting videos or posting their hustle and their grind or the things that they're facing right now, to know that there's other people out there doing the same thing I'm doing, just kind of trying to figure it out and do something to better their lives or better the lives of somebody else. That just resonates with me, man. I have a huge, heart to want to help people, and to serve people in some way, shape or form. It's just huge. And so I think the biggest thing for me is just the daily reminder. I mean, you're wearing the patience shirt right now, which I'm waiting on my patience shirts to come, because, man, patience, right? I mean, that's what I want to plaster on me too. Is that
we all need it. I'm telling you, man, we all need patience, man, especially in the business world. I got to ask now, you're starting out this business, floating, sleep, sensory deprivation.
Yeah.
What are some of the struggles, writing a business plan, starting the business, getting it off the ground? Like, let us know, tell everyone out there.
Yeah. So, like I said, I started this journey back in January, and I just started, really just looking online at, like, what is this floating thing all about? What does it mean? What is it, what's the science behind it, all that. So essentially what floating is, like you said, it's sensory deprivation, although we are in the industry trying not to use that term anymore because it's got a negative connotation. So, it's really,
why is that?
Well, you think of deprivation, it's just got like this, like this negative connotation. And when you actually look at the history, when you talk to people about sensory deprivation tanks, they think back to the 50s and 60s, which is in the 60s, I can't remember, there was a film that came out where some guy went into a sensory deprivation tank. It came out as this like werewolf, half alien, half monkey thing, and went crazy, right? Yeah. And so a lot of the older generations look at that and they're like, I'm not stepping in no sensory deprivation tank. It's going to turn me into some crazy hairy alien or something. And in the 50s, when floating actually really got created, was by this guy named Dr. Lilly, John C. Lilly. And what he wanted to do is, in a sense, he wanted to find out what happens to our brain when we're sleeping, or when you start taking away certain senses that we have, right? Smell, touch, hearing, and all that kind of stuff. What happens to our brain? So he devised this archaic, crazy looking tank thing that you had to wear this helmet looking like space, big old helmet thing, and a lot of hoses going on to you. And you had to be like floating in this crazy looking tank. And it was just like, looked like something out of the, I don't know, 50s scary movie time, you know? But what he found is that when you put the brain and the body in a floating state, or in a state of being able to float, and there's no gravity, an anti-gravity state, your brain actually starts to do some really cool things. And so he really started to look at that. So that's, so we use the term rest therapy or floating therapy now. And rest is an acronym for restricted environment therapy. And really what it is, it's putting yourself, especially now we're so connected, right? And we talk about all the time getting, disconnected from technology and disconnected from our life, or unplugging and all that stuff. And let me tell you, there's no environment on the planet like a floating tank or a float therapy. There's nothing like it. There's no place, there's no environment like it. There's no place you can go do it. People will say like, well, I floated in the Dead Sea, because the Dead Sea has a very high concentration of salt. And so you can float in there, and people go do that, and it's crazy, but you're still having to float, and you're in the ocean. You're like moving around, and your senses are still going up, and your brain is still trying to keep your body level. Because what actually happens is when you go and you lay on your back in a pool and you float, your brain goes into flight or fight senses, because it thinks it's drowning. And so it starts to wig out a little bit, even though like, okay, well, I'm just floating, whatever. But your senses are crazy. So what happens was in a float tank, you get into this environment, and the environment is soundproof, lightproof, and it's about let's just say 200 gallons of water with about 1,000 pounds, anywhere between 700 to 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt in there. So it makes this solution that you get to float in, and it's only 10 inches, so it's real, not thick. And that the water is actually heated to skin temperature. So when you get in there, in about 5-10 minutes, you kind of lose a sensation of where your skin ends and where the water begins. And so hence the term floating, you actually feel like you're floating in air, the zero gravity feel. Astronauts have been noted to say that it's the closest environment to space that they've been able to experience. And so, I'm sure most people know like Epsom salt baths, right? It's very common. A lot of people soak in Epsom salt baths, or, if you got recovery from an injury, you're soaking in that. I mean, that's been around for eons. So there's nothing new there. But when you start to take away your sight, your smell, your ability to hear, and even a little bit of the ability to touch and feel, your brain starts to, it's never been in this environment before, right? I mean, since you were in the womb, your body's never been floating. You just kind of, it doesn't know what to do. So you go in this environment and you lay down, and you get in the tank, shut the door, and your body just, as soon as you lay back, just bloop, just kind of just effortlessly you float. And then your body's about half in the water, half out. You spend about 60 to 90 minutes in this environment. So let's just talk about the floating, what it does like for the body. Every joint in your body gets to decompress at the same time. Okay, I don't know if you've ever been on like one of those machines that decompression for the spinal decompression that kind of pulls you and all that stuff. It's just, it's decompressing your spine, which is great. Yeah. It feels great. I've had slipped discs in the back and bulging discs, and that's helped when I did those things. But this is something that I get to go in and you just lay back, and everything starts to just relax and decompress. And then, so if you got recovery from let's just say like an injury, the Epsom salt and magnesium in there is going to help. The Epsom salt and the magnesium is actually going to start pulling out toxins from your body. So your body's actually detoxifying while you're in there. And then the biggest thing for me, not only the physical, I think is huge. I think there's so many benefits to being able to go float physically, but the mental thing is what gets me, man. That's kind of where my passion lies. And that is, it allows your brain to kind of start to turn off. And it's an art, just like meditation, right? Like you don't just go, okay, I'm going to meditate one day and you listen to a meditation track and you're like fully into meditating, right? Like it doesn't work that way. You work for months and years of being able to, to hone in that craft, right? I mean, you have to you got to spend the time and you got to put in the time and work to get to that state. Well, probably from meditating, right? You can get into that theta state where your brain is just kind of like, okay, theta waves are moving and I can really just kind of just relax and chill and I can think about something. Well, floating does that for you almost instantaneously. I say instantaneously, and I probably shouldn't use that word. It takes a little bit of time to get there. But within the first float session, somebody can get into that meditative state without any training, without any pre-knowledge of that. I've never meditated before in my life. Now, as I'm jumping into the wellness industry and stuff, I'm starting to look into that and stuff. And I don't know if I'll be an avid meditator, but it's the same thing, man. Prayer life and meditation, when you kind of quiet everything else out and focus in on one thing, it does wonders for you, mentally and physically. So let's see, I kind of lost my train of thought here. So you're in this environment that your brain's never been in, and it kind of flips out a little bit. There's no doubt. When you go in there at first, you're like, your thoughts are racing because it's like your brain doesn't know what to do. It's like, I've never felt this way before. I don't know what to do. Man, I got to check my phone. I got an appointment that I got to get to after this. I got to pick up my kids, whatever it is, right? Life starts happening. But then after like 15, 20 minutes, those things start to melt away, and you start just like having those like kind of quiet moments of like, whoa, okay. I don't hear anything. I don't see anything, and it's like, okay. And I'll tell you what, for me, when my brain is going and it won't stop, either about my hustle that I'm doing, about my life, my job, past experiences or future experiences or whatever, if I start working myself up, man, there's no place that I can sit there and I can just let it go. And so for an hour to an hour and a half, I get complete silence, complete unplug, complete moments to think. It's a craft. So, as you float more often, you train your brain to kind of get into that meditative state. I've gone into the tank wanting to just get relief from my body pain. And that's all I think about, just relief from my body. That's all I want. And that's it. There's a term out there in the industry called, it's like the reset button for your body and your mind. Yeah. I mean, you have a stressful week, all of us do. And it's like, you come home and what's the thing that you do to relax? Some people are like, oh, I want to have a, nice cigar and a nice brandy. That's my moment of relaxing. Some people like to turn the TV on and veg out that way. Some people like to go to the gym, right? That's where they get their stress out. Some people want to go hit the basketball court. That's where they get their stress out. Some people want to read a book. Some people have to go on vacation, whatever. This is an opportunity for you to do that and build that into your life very easily when you go float. And man, I just can't say enough about how amazing it is. But so I'm going to go back to the science behind it, because I think that's important. When your brain actually gets in that theta state, that's the same state where we talk about when you sleep and you're in the REM sleep. Okay. So your brain is active, right? When you're in that REM sleep, but your body has shut down and your brain's going, okay, it's time to relax everything. And it's time to regenerate and, recuperate. Right? That's when, the body sends all of its, cells and everything to go fix what's wrong. Right. I have a scratch on my hand. When I'm sleeping, that's when my body's attacking that scratch and healing it and everything else. So your body's working. But how many times do we actually fall into that REM sleep? And get that solid sleep we need? Probably not very often. Like I said in the beginning, right? How many out of 8 hours, if you go to sleep 8 hours before you're supposed to wake up, which a lot of us don't, what does that do? And how is that affecting our daily life? And it is, we need our sleep, we need our rest, but the fact of the matter is we don't do it. Right. By the time that, for me, right, our life, by the time my daughter doesn't get home till 8:30, my youngest doesn't get home till 8:30 at night. So we made it a pact with our family. We sit down and have family dinners. So that means the whole family waits to 8:30 to have dinner. And we're not done till 9:30 at night. And then it's like, okay, go shower and get ready for the day. Right. That's late. That's something that we decided as a family that we're going to do because it's important to us. But I lost my train of thought there.
Well, let me ask you this, because like you're talking about sleep and stuff. I don't know if you've like really like dove into like studying like people who research sleep and the benefits of it. What are some of the benefits, the lifelong benefits of floating?
Yeah.
Have there been any studies out there?
Yeah. So lifelong benefits, that's something that's probably hasn't been studied very often right now, just because since 2000, the industry has made a resurgence and started to break through back into the commercial industry. There was a big push in the 80s, and that kind of died over the 80s because there was a lot of influence with AIDS and stuff like that, and worried that AIDS was being spread via water. So public spaces with water and things like that kind of got a scare, and so the industry died. And so now it's making this resurgence. And in the early 2000s, there's another doctor out there, Dr. Justin Feinstein, who he is spearheading this industry right now with the science. And he started out doing studies on anxieties, depression, and they're just moving into like ADHD studies and things like that to see what floating will do. So now when let's look at somebody who's had, let's just say they have fibromyalgia, right? Very painful from what I hear, existence that they have when they have this thing. And it's debilitating, right? They can't get up and move, and they just want to be laying down and doing nothing. Fibromyalgia patients get to go in the tank, and let's say they float for 90 minutes at a time. Well, their pain is constant, right? They live, it's not something like, oh, I have a headache today. It's like, no, it's pretty constant physical battle they have. So for them to go float once a week is huge, because they get a reset button on their tense and tight and painful muscles and body when they go float. And what it does is it gives them, like I said, it decompresses every joint and everything, and the effects last. It's not like getting a massage, and you get a massage and then, the next day you're like, oh, I'm sore from my massage, but all my muscles are kind of tense and my mind's the same way. It didn't do anything for my mind. This resets the whole body from head to toe and everything in between, and allows them to get some comfort that they've never gotten before. Maybe they had to pop pills to sleep, right? We've seen in the studies them being able to wean off sleeping pills and pills that they were taking in the evening because they float, and they're not floating every day. They're only floating maybe once a week, but the effects of the float last for days. And so they're able to kind of do that. We've seen cancer patients going through chemo. There's a YouTube video out there of, I believe, is a teenager. This kid's going through chemo. Sucks, right? I mean, from what I've heard, you need to go through chemo. It just kills you, or literally kills you, but it's also just kills your energy and your, right, all that stuff. And so this kid actually gets his chemo treatment, then goes and floats almost right after, if not, like if he can't, like the next day. And he says that it just resets his body, and he gets 2 or 3 days where he's like, he wants to be out in the world. He wants to go shopping with his mom. He wants to go see his friends, where before he's stuck in the house, living this existence of post chemo feelings, and he's in pain and all this stuff. But this helps reset his body and his mind to be able to go do that. So there's ton. The thing that gets me right now, and I think because it hits home, is the anxiety stuff. It's not healed me. It's not taken away any of those feelings or any of those things, but it helps keep them at a level of being able to control them. Something that I can sit there and go, okay, my levels are coming up here. I need to go float. It brings me back down here, resets me. And I go, okay, I got a good week of clarity and all this kind of stuff. So let's see what else. There's a lot of studies in recovery right now, surgeries, recoveries, or athletic injuries. So like Steph Curry, big time basketball player, obviously, right? Golden State Warriors. Yeah, they won last year. And he's an avid floater, and has been he's got a few YouTube videos out there about him floating and being interviewed about him floating. And I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe there was an article or an interview that he said that he had this whole team this last year, or a majority of the team actually went and floated during the finals. And he equates a lot of their focus and a lot of the ability to execute all on floating. He uses it to visualize, not only for the physical, mental, but he uses it to go in and visualize his game and focus in on whatever he needs to focus in on. And he can do that. One of the greatest things that I've been able to do while I float is I've been able to, I almost have imagine a pinwheel or like a prize wheel with a bunch of, options on it, right? And you spin it. And that's my brain with all my thoughts, just tick, 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 and I'm waiting for it to slow down and land on that one. And I can do that. Yeah. In the float tank, I'm able to slow that thing down and pick that one thing I want to think about. So right now it's me starting my floating business, and I'm right in the process of writing my business plan. And so it's like, okay, I want to focus in on this one thing. What do I want to say about this specific X? And I could pick that out and focus just on that during the rest of my float. I can just tune my mind into that one thing I want to think about, and it's not distracted by anything else because I don't hear anything else. I don't got my dog coming up to me. I don't have my kids. I don't have, my phone's not beeping at me. I'm in this environment that I could focus just on that. And even for people with chronic pain, they can focus just on their pain or where their pain is, and they just watch it kind of just deteriorate and dissipate.
It's kind of like you're tapping into like your subconscious. That's what happens with like meditation. And I could see like with like Steph Curry and these athletes, like visualizing, being able to focus. I could see it being big for artists, actors, and just being like, all right, I'm going to float so I can focus in on my script. Or if you're an athlete, you're focusing on your game, your craft, you're being able to perform at a high level. So I could see like high level, not just high level performers, but people just being like, all right, it's a form of meditation to me because I do transcendental meditation, and you just like thoughts that like you don't need to like really think about, who like those minute things that come into your brain. You're like, all right, like being on the phone, sending this email, this, that, like you're going to get that done. But like really tapping into your subconscious and just thinking about like deeper things and deeper thoughts, and like starting a business, like it's in us, but you got to tap into that. And then once you do, that's when really great things happen.
Yeah, man. You're absolutely right. If you look at my own story, when I started floating, I was in a dark place all around, not only from the event that I was in, but I didn't have a job. I wasn't contributing to my family, all these things. And I started to float, and it helped right my ship and make it so that I can think about something that's positive or move forward with something. And I'll tell you what, I mean, I've probably floated now close to 30 times since January. And
nice.
I can, the days I float, man, I'm on top of my world. I am ready to take on the world. I'm ready to sit down on my computer and just, smash those keys on whatever I'm working on, and do that. I'm motivated. I feel good. And who doesn't want to feel good? Who doesn't want to walk away from something going like, I feel good, and there's no crash to it, right? It's not like, I don't know, getting a shot of heroin or something like that, and then you got to crash a couple days later or whenever you come off that high, right? Like this high or these feelings that you have, they last with you. And that is huge. I think a lot of people in today's society, we're so stressed out about our lives, and we're not doing anything about it. We're only making it worse. We're eating worse. We're pumping more caffeine into us. We're pumping more drugs into us. Our environment is tainted no matter how you look at it. We're breathing in stuff we never breathed in before. We're, dealing with a political climate that a lot of us have never seen before, and that puts us in a heightened sense, and all that stuff.
That's a whole nother podcast. What's your elevator pitch? What's your elevator pitch to someone? I've never floated before and I want to do it, but you run into me on the street and you say, yeah, I float. What's your elevator pitch to me to get me to float?
Yeah. So I start out describing kind of what the environment would be. So when you go float, it's like a very luxury bathtub that has an enclosure on it. And it's an enclosed environment where there's no sound, there's no sight, there's no smells. And you're going to float in this solution of Epsom salt. And the Epsom salt, I'll describe what the Epsom salt will do. If they've never heard of Epsom salt or what the benefits of magnesium are. Usually a lot of people will be like, oh yeah, I've soaked in the bathtub, or I've done that or heard of that. And so I just said, imagine that like 1,000 times, 1,000 times more intense. And it's like I said before, it's an environment unlike any other in the world. And so then I'll ask them, usually before I even go any further, I'll ask them, are you stressed? Okay. Do you sleep well? Do you, I'll try to find what's going on in their life. And then pinpoint what floating can do for that, because there's so many aspects of it. One of the greatest things I think can happen to somebody when they do go float is when the float owner or the people that work there ask them, what's their intention of floating? And usually, obviously, first time person goes in there and goes, I don't know, I'm just here because it sounds great or, whatever. So my pitch is to really find what's going on in their life. and what can benefit from that. Because some people are like, hey, I'm a happy-go-lucky guy. I got no stress in my life. I love my job, love my kids, love my wife. You know, my bank account is overflowing and I don't worry about paying bills and all that stuff. Then, hey, you know, they might not be a candidate for life or for floating. And so I just kind of try to, you know, hone it in on what they're saying to me. And then I, you know, craft it that way. And I know that's not really like, it's not my, it's not a specific elevator pitch, but I do pitch it differently to people I'm talking to. So yeah, but I start out describing just kind of what that is. And then I give them a little bit of information about the science behind it, that there are studies going on, you know, if we get involved in the conversation a little bit. But the 30 seconds is usually just about the environment. Hey, you're going to go float in this kind of futuristic looking pod looking thing or cabin. It's got the water, it's heated to skin temperature. And, you know, you're going to feel freaking awesome when you do it. I know it's not the best elevator pitch, but.
No, it works. One word to describe floating.
One word to describe floating. Magical. Pure magic, man.
How about, what's the future of your business looking like? Lay the plan out there for everyone so we know when it's going to open up so we can come and float.
Right on. Well, I am in the process of finishing our business plan. We're going to be presenting that to, you know, for banks and a couple investors that we have on the on our short list. And then time frame is I'm hoping to have a soft launch almost like a year from today, a year from this time frame is at the end of summer next year, opening up of a soft launch and then going into our grand opening in the fall to early winter of next year. So that's the game plan I'm really working on. I'm really trying to make that happen, man. In fact, these next, or the 2 weeks right now that I've been working, and the next 2 weeks are so pivotal or important in the life of this business because of my time frame. Because I got a real tight time frame I need, and I gotta, you know, get the funding, and I gotta, you know, find the location, and you know, then we gotta build this place out and start marketing it and all that kind of stuff, which I've already kind of started to do. You know, if I could put a shameless plug on our social media, I would love for you guys to come find us on Facebook at Go to Float or Instagram at Go to Float. Or you can look me up as the Float Guy or hashtag the Float Guy, or look me up by my name, Adam DeCorte. It's my personal page. I'm starting to move a lot of my stuff I've been doing on my personal page over to our business presence, because I know, right? I mean, you shouldn't be doing that on your personal stuff, but but I started doing that, you know, and here's why. I knew when I knew I was going to jump into this business, I knew that the biggest hurdle in this industry right now is awareness of floating, and bringing that out. So I said, okay, I have a circle of people that I'm a part of, you know, these circles, and some of them overlap with each other. Specifically, this newfound family I have in the Route 91 family. You know, we are a basket cases, right? And I'm thinking this is the perfect group of people that can utilize this tool in their toolbox for their life to be able to right their ship again. Because I know that their ship is messed up. So yeah, man, hopefully praying that all goes well. We'll be in grand opening at the end of next year. Yeah.
You have faith. You're a husband, you're a father, businessman, entrepreneur, going down this journey. It's been a roller coaster. The Route 91 survivor. Yeah. What advice can you give for people in general, and then people out in the business world?
People in general. So no matter where you're at in your belief system, I don't know, Buddha, Muslim, no faith, agnostic, whatever you are, find something that resonates with you, that pushes you to be a better person. Yeah, that's it. For those of us that are in business, man, find a mentor, find somebody in your industry that has walked your path before you, and that you trust, that is like-minded like you, and get in contact with them and push it, man, and be active in this group. I know even for myself, I haven't been active so much in the Hustler group Facebook page too much. I've commented here and there, and you know, seen people's posts and tried to, you know, encourage them when they posted things, or when they posted videos, you know, liking it and send them a good word of encouragement. But truly find somebody who's walked the path that you're on before you, because it's so much easier when you can pick up that phone or send them a text and be like, yo, what the heck? Like, I tried this and it failed, and they can come alongside you and help figure out why, or also rejoice in your successes. When you're by yourself living this hustle life, man, it's hard, when you're like, every day you're grinding. But when somebody sends you an encouraging text out of the blue, it just says, hey man, thinking about you. Hopefully you had a good day. Boom, done. That picks you up a little bit. So find somebody that you can be a mentor, or that you could get mentored by. And man, be involved in this group, this hustler group, man. I tell you, I've benefited so much. One benefit that I would say that I've gotten is Greg did a video, I don't know how many, maybe beginning of this year, about when he travels, he goes to different, or tries to hit up different SCORE offices, and those are like small business. It's part of the Small Business Administration, and they help small businesses. Tons and tons and tons of free resources out there. So I literally just this last week had my first meeting with my mentor from the SBA SCORE thing, and I tell you what, it is huge. I try to have mentors in my personal life, and then I try to also have mentors in my business life. One of the things that I was encouraged to do from that first meeting was to go get a mentor in like I'm telling you to go get a mentor in your industry. Find a mentor. So I'm on the hunt right now for somebody who's a center owner, is doing that, and I think I found a place out in Redlands, California, that I'm hoping that I get to go be an intern at, and learn their business, help them a little bit, but as well as just have them take me under their wing and learn from everything that they got. Because when you try to do it on your own, it sucks. And there's nothing, only you have the ability to make something out of nothing. And only you have I use this analogy and then I'll stop. Imagine there's a fire in front of you. You got two cans, one with water and one with fuel, and what are you going to pour on that? Are you going to fuel the fire? Or are you going to put it out? Now, sometimes you might want to fuel that fire because that fire is a good thing, right? So you want to douse it, keep it going, right? Keep that ball rolling. Sometimes you're like, I need to extinguish that mother before it gets too big and burns down the house, right? You got to know that, but you're in control. You have those two things. You choose what you want to do. And when you have a mentor behind you and you go, hey, mentor, which one should I do? And they're like, oh, you need to put that fire out right now. And you're like, ooh, okay, I'll put it out. And that just helps push you to that next level. That's it.
Adam DeCorte, man, thank you. I appreciate it. We were supposed to go like 30, 40 minutes, but we went the distance today, man.
Right on, man.
Yeah. It's all good. I love
thanks, Mac. Thanks, Mac. I really appreciate you reaching out, man. And to all you hustlers out there, keep on hustling, man. I'm telling you, only we know what we can do, and only you know what you can accomplish. And I want you to accomplish everything that you set your mind to. Get involved in this group. Connect with Greg. I couldn't believe it when I got some emails and some connections, and even when Mac right here emailed me, and I was like, oh my gosh, my mind is blown. But man, when you put yourself out there and you do that, good things come to that. Good things come. So thanks a lot, Mac. I appreciate it, bro.
No, man, thanks for sharing your story and that message. That mentorship, putting yourself out there, that resonates with everyone out there, man. Put yourself out there. That's the hustler's way, the hustler's motto. This group is growing. Greg is really good at what he does. He's a genius. Yeah. He is the inspiration. He's the motivation behind all of this. Without him, none of this is possible. And I know he's grinding. He's hustling. He's been traveling this week, and I'm going to catch up with him in a little bit. But he's hustling for everyone out there, and reach out to him because he is a great resource, and he will help you. Yeah. I know that. He's been very helpful for myself, and he's my best friend, but that's my go-to guy. And Adam, thanks, man. Go to float.com. Check it out. I'm going to actually go float. I'm going to schedule that. And then when we get out to the West Coast, when you open up the place, we're coming to float with you, man. Absolutely, man. Hey, let me know how you float, man. Send me a text. I want to hear about your experience. I'd love to talk about it. Will do, brother. You know I will. All right, man. All right, Peace man. Out. Thanks for joining us. Have a good one. If you haven't floated yet, go float. Get your float on. Get your float on. And get to hustleisland.com. See you guys. You Thanks. Right on, my friend. Awesome, man. Thanks. I really appreciate it, bro. Have a good one. Hey, if there's anything I can ever do for you too, please let me know. If you make it out to the West Coast of California, man, hit me up. I'd love to take you out for a beer or coffee or lunch or something. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I appreciate that. I'll definitely stay in touch. I'll let you know how the float goes. And like I said, if we're out there on the West Coast, man, we'll definitely be hitting you up for sure. Yeah, right on, man. For sure, for sure. All right, my friend. Man. Have a good one. Thanks. Peace out.